Hello, I want to welcome everyone to the Power of Our Story. We are a place of safety and camaraderie for our protectors. And today I'm very grateful that our dear friend on the Power of Our Story, Chris Gregorio, he's an active duty law enforcement officer, will be facilitating our talk today. So I hand it over to you, Chris. Thanks so much for doing it.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. Good morning. As she said, I'm Chris Gregorio, and we got a great guest today. He's a 25-year plus law enforcement officer in the Pacific Northwest and a retired Sergeant Major in the United States Marine Corps. I've worked with this guy for a very long time, and as you see, he's got a beautiful, happy face. Known him for a long time, and to be honest with you, it's one of those guys that I don't see smile very often. And recently we had an opportunity to connect, and I learned something about him that I haven't known in 20 years. All the things and the career stuff that he's gone through, he's a super resilient, happy guy, despite his big smile on his face all the time. He's a very, very happy guy and absolutely loves what he does. But ladies and gentlemen, this is a retired Sergeant Major Dan Espinoza. He was born in Orange County, or Orange, California, raised by his parents and 5 siblings. Throughout his early life, he was fascinated with the military and stories he heard from World War II veterans. That led him to enlist in the United States Marine Corps. Rising through the ranks, Sergeant Major Espinoza filled many roles. He was a fire team leader, squad leader, platoon leader, force protection senior NCO, anti-terrorism mission team, and led a team of Marines for anti-piracy voyage in the merchant marine ship full of military gear into dangerous waters from San Diego, your guys' home, to Kuwait. Short trip. The many deployments and missions led him to the rank of first sergeant and then sergeant major. Combat deployments to Africa, Iraq, Afghanistan, and overall 52 countries. Sergeant Major Espinoza was assigned to a special purpose Marine Air Ground Task Force in Central and South America, tailored to conduct crisis response contingency operations, theater security cooperation, enabling operations, and all other missions as may be directed throughout the assigned combat command. He concluded a service of 30 years as a regimental sergeant major. Currently, Sergeant Major Espinoza works for a police department in a large city in the Pacific Northwest. He's worked patrol, he's been a detective, he's worked undercover, which you can tell by him, he'd be a great undercover guy, bike patrol, and is currently in the motorcycle unit, which he considers the best and most fun police assignment in his career. Sergeant Major Espinoza is a defensive tactics instructor, certified taser instructor, and a motorcycle instructor, so he has a deep passion for teaching and educating. Sergeant Major Espinoza has been married to his beautiful wife, Ingrid, for 36 years, and they have 4 grown children and 5 grandchildren, who I've recently had the pleasure of meeting. Great family. On his own time, Sergeant Major Espinoza enjoys building cars and motorcycles. He trains in judo, boxing, wrestling, Muay Thai, but mostly jiu-jitsu. Sergeant Major Espinoza is involved in a combat veteran group named PTSD Foundation of America. Because of his passion assisting veterans in need, traveling and spending time, that's why he's doing that. But he really enjoys traveling and spending time with his grandkids to take up all the other time, which is a huge joy. Which is a great home work-life balance with all the things that he's done in his career. So without further ado, Sergeant Major Espinoza, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Good to be on here, and thank you for inviting me.
If you would like to kind of, I know we went over your bio, but if you'd like to kind of go into a little bit more depth as to what made you, kind of shaped your path into joining the military, other than just the fascination of World War II, and then kind of go through some of that. And then if you want to dive into kind of a little bit more of what you did in some of your deployments.
Okay. So I've thought about it many times, and I really don't know what exactly influenced me, because I had no family that were direct family members that were in the military. I just remember at a very young age just being drawn to it. And when I was about 11 years old, I got a paper route, and on my paper route, I had many, mostly World War II, but World War I veterans also. And it would, if I did my paper out, it'd take me about 20-30 minutes, but routinely it took me 3 to 6 hours because I spent so much time interacting with the customers, and I was just fascinated by the stories. But I was also just patriotic and just drawn to the sense of wanting to serve my country, and it would just like almost like I was born to do it is the way I felt. And I looked at several different options, explored all the branches of the military, and ended up in the Marine Corps. When I went in, I didn't go in there thinking, oh, I'm going to spend 30 years and I'm going to make it to this rank. I literally just took it year by year, and just I enjoyed it so much I kept re-enlisting, and I found myself doing 30 years, making it sergeant major. So it's just something that it was like a duck in water. I felt comfortable. Even today, I miss the military lifestyle, the regimented structure. I still get up early every morning, work out, and it's just kind of a routine that I've done for so long. So I've loved it. But along the way, and I always told Marines this: when we leave, it's not necessarily the Marine Corps or whatever branch you serve in that you miss, it's each other. And early on, I figured that out, and you probably heard many stories where when you're on the battlefield, people will even say in that moment, you're there for the guy next to you. Doesn't matter whatever the political aspect of it or why you're there or what you're doing. It really comes down to you're there for each other. And so throughout my career, it's just been amazing the people that I've been surrounded with, that have been able to forge relationships, and even to this day, many of my buddies throughout the country, throughout the world, I stay in contact with. In fact, my probably my closest buddy, we went in together at the same time, and he's from Australia. In fact, he got his citizenship right after we went in, and we actually ended up serving together in Africa and Afghanistan and several. And he retired a couple years before I did, but he lives in Colorado now, and we're in constant contact. And to have these kind of relationships, it's just awesome. I've enjoyed the whole journey.
And we talk a little bit about some of your deployments, what your experiences are there. You're part of the PTSD Foundation of America, and then kind of what led you, some of the traumas that you dealt with, and things that you've experienced, and as well as your battle buddies, and what kind of led you to the PTSD side of that, and how you've remained after all these years to be resilient and happy, and really kind of dealing with those daily struggles that a lot of folks that are going to be watching this kind of deal with.
Yes. So, there's a lot. When I first came in the Marine Corps, and I'm sure many of you can relate, it was a different world. It was a time when none of the behind the scenes stuff was talked about, whether it be PTSD or any other issues that you dealt with, your mental health, all that kind of stuff was never on the forefront and never really talked about. And even in past wars, you heard about things, but not why it's going on. And along the way, along my career, I'm glad that there's been a shift in both the military and law enforcement and other professions, and just in the civilian world, of focus on people's mental health. And it's been, I've seen a lot of things throughout my career that's led me to where it's become a passion of mine to assist specifically veterans, but probably say about 10 years ago or so, I was contacted by some people in law enforcement that dealt with law enforcement dealing with PTSD, and there was a specific need for law enforcement that were also military. And I was contacted for that reason, and I was able to talk to different people at different points to give assistance. So it's kind of led me to this track of just helping anybody out there in need, because I've been exposed to a lot of things, a lot of people that have had needs, and it's given me a whole new understanding of things that people deal with and how they go about to deal with it, as they progress. So, and when I came in, like I said, it wasn't talked about, and then we went a shift of now we're focusing on it. One of the things that I do want to bring up, because I do think it's important, when I was probably about an E7, I remember. So in the military, the upper chain, the officers and the senior staff NCOs, we were constantly assessing the Marines for any type of issues that they may be dealing with, whether maybe they're getting divorced, or maybe they just had a death in the family, right? And it was good that we were doing that and just kind of keeping our eyes on them so we can gauge things. Same thing can be said, in any profession, or in any job out in the civilian world. But one thing that I was always pushing is that as we sat there and did that, is don't forget about ourselves. So it's easy to look, if you're a boss, supervisor, any type of position, and you care about your people, which you should, it's easy to look at taking care of them, but at the same time, look around you, because these things can affect anybody at any level, any age. It doesn't matter who you are, it can affect. And I think probably most of you have probably seen examples of sometimes we get blindsided by the people that you wouldn't expect, I guess. And I'll give a story. I was in Iraq in 2004 and 5, and my first sergeant at the time, his name was Todd Parisi, and awesome person, very very motivating. In fact, he was a motivational speaker. When he retired from the Marine Corps, he became a high school teacher, and in his first year, he became Teacher of the Year. He went on to travel doing motivational speeches, and one day he committed suicide, and it blew a lot of people away. And it's bad in any realm, but in this particular case, he had affected so many people. I mean, you're talking, from the Marine Corps, from the high school kids that taught, and all the other things that he was involved in. It affected people, but it was always like, of all people, you would never expect. This is the guy that was encouraging you to off the ledge or to seek help, or things like that. And that brings me back to what I started talking about, is don't forget about each other, yourself, your peers, even in the upper level of management, or whatever job profession you're in. You want to take care of those people below you, but also the people around you.
You talked about taking care of yourself. Will you dive into a little bit of how you deal with all the things of the multiple combat tours in your law enforcement career, all the the bad things that you've seen and had to do over your career. How have you personally dealt with those things to minimize the emotional, mental, spiritual impact of those things so that you can keep on with your mission? And I know, for the most part, a lot of us bury those things down, but at some point you have to deal with them. If we're smart, we deal with them incrementally, and we choose to fight that battle before it chooses to throw the whole mountain at us. How do you deal with that? Or how have you
Well,
dealt with that?
I do have to start out by saying that I'm unique. My wife always reminds me that, because in just a lot of ways, things I do or the way I think, she has to remind me that other people don't do that or think that way. So I start that off that way because particular uh, in my combat deployments, I always said that it was easy for me. It was easy because uh, I had a mission and I just did my mission. It was tough on my family because they're at home waiting for me, worrying about me, and not knowing where I'm at, what I'm doing, all that. So it's usually, that's my opinion, is that it's always going to be harder on family members and friends than the service member. But that may not be everybody's experience. That's my experience. But I was able to, I called it a switch. I was able to flip that switch, and I come home and I'm able to be the dad that I needed to be, the husband, on and on and on, fill that role. I realize that not everybody can flip that switch or very easily, and that's where a lot of the people that I've dealt with, a lot of their issues started when they come back because they're not able to go back to where they need to or feel like they fit in, whether it be with their own family or their friends or coworkers or whatever it is. So one of the things that I felt that assists people is being around other people, whether it be law enforcement, military, whatever it is. It usually assists people to be around like-minded people, and I'm gonna use the military people that I've dealt with, particularly in this PTSD Foundation of America. It's a group based out of Houston, but have chapters all over the nation. That you have to have been a combat veteran and be diagnosed with PTSD. But the program, it's what I really like about it is that it uses each other. Now there are some where like counselors and there's some offsite meetings and things like that. But the real biggest assistance comes from each other. And what I've seen is people will resist, say like law enforcement, and they have some issues that they're dealing with, to just talk to somebody that's been to college, read some books that's gonna help them. They're a little bit resistant to it because they kind of feel like you haven't lived my life, you haven't walked in my shoes. So those people still are able to assist, but like I said, the person needing it a lot of times is resistant to it. So uh, people tend to be more open to somebody that's been where they've been, done what they've done, things like that. So something that I've done is to stay connected. I think that's important. Connected with each other, and we all learn signs of when maybe people are feeling down or having some issues, but I found that's not always it's always the case. Sometimes it's the person you least expect, or they may have a smile on their face and everything seems good, but you know what? They need you to reach out. So coming back from specifically deployments, I constantly stay in contact with my close friends and even other people, just they come in my mind, and give them a call or just reach out, because I think we as humans, we really need that. I think during the whole shutdown in 2020 with COVID, it really had a big effect, because something that maybe some people didn't even realize is we as humans, we need contact with each other. I even say touch, like if it's a handshake, a hug, it's important for our well-being as humans. And without that, I don't know if you've ever known anybody that lived like a hermit lifestyle, but they become very odd, and a part of that is a lack of contact with other humans. So in our world of, like I said, whether it be law enforcement, fire department, military, whatever, I think it's important to reach out, stay in contact. In my law enforcement agency, we have people now and then that are go out for minor instances where they're maybe put on administrative leave, or maybe medical reasons, whatever. They're out of work. And what I've noticed is maybe in the beginning, maybe the first week, 2 weeks, or maybe like even like a shooting incident or something like that, people are contacting them. Hey, how are you doing? They're reaching out. But after that, it just kind of drops off. And the longer you're out, maybe you're on leave for 6 months, a year, or longer than that, the longer that it goes, you're not having people contact anymore. It gets a little lonely out there. And I've seen that time and time again. So I always make it a point to, when people are out for any reason, just reach out, just say, hey, just thinking about it. Hey, how are you doing? And like things like that. And if you've ever experienced that, I know from the receiving end, you appreciate it. And that's something that I use and always try to remember, and kind of in my mind, go down a kind of a checklist of, hey, so and so, I haven't talked to them for a while. Just reach out. Just recently, I don't have any social media, but fortunately, my wife does, and I say that fortunately because through her social media, I'm able to find out things I didn't know about, like even my neighborhood, things like that. But the other day, she mentioned to me, one of my Marines in 2005, Iraq. He had some issues when we came back, and he's been struggling ever since. And she is on social media where she reads his post all the time, and she mentioned to me the other day, hey, so and so, he just stopped posting all of a sudden. And so I ended up reaching out to him by phone. And anyway, so that's what I'm talking about. It's just reaching out to each other, keeping involved, because really we all want to know that people care. Really, people around us, our loved ones. And if you're in a bad place and you don't feel that people care, I mean, it can really suck you down.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that tribe. And one thing that I learned from the military is that, family, they say, is blood deep. But in my experience, having a crappy family situation, where I found family and true family, and I could call somebody today, was my military friends. The brothers that you served with. You might not talk for 20 years, but there's people that I could call that would be on a plane as soon as we got off the phone that would be here, and vice versa. I think I want to reemphasize what you talked about is staying in contact and keeping that tribe. Although it might not be a fix, just being surrounded by your battle buddies that experience some of the same things as you might keep that balloon from blowing up. It's going to let enough air out. You're going to talk a bunch of smack with each other and jab at each other about this deployment or that deployment or this encounter or that encounter. But that keeps everything at a manageable level. And oftentimes, excuse me, you talked about, being a hermit. a lot of times, we find ourselves in a place of dejection, some feeling weak, that kind of makes you be a little bit more reclused, and pull away. It reminds me, you were talking about your buddy that took his own life. We've had several of those folks on our, just in our department, let alone the people we served with in the military, lose that battle. But it reminds me of a commercial that I just saw, and Barry, makes me think of you, because I think it comes from Australia. It's a really kind of a grumpy old guy, and they're at a football game, a soccer game, excuse me. And the grumpy guy, he's got his buddies cheering on, and they go through several games with that. Hey, watch your buddies. And then one time it shows up, the happy guy's gone. He was the one that was having the struggles, saying you never know what somebody's dealing with. You kind of touched on it earlier as well, as a leader, which is amazing at a sergeant major's level, that you understood your Marines baseline, because you were active with them and you were always encountering them. In that vein, one of the things that people deal with a lot is survivor's guilt. We've all lost friends to suicide. And even, downrange, when you had Marines that were underneath you on missions and things like that. If you ever dealt with that, the loss of one of your Marines or your battle buddies that you knew of, can you kind of touch a little bit on survivor's guilt, if you have some experience with that and how you deal with that?
Yes, so that is something that comes up a lot. In fact, the person I just spoke about that wasn't on social media, that was one of the things that he had some issues with, survivor's guilt, and I've seen that many times. And I think that it's good that people feel, in a way, it's the unselfishness of kind of thinking in some cases, like, I wish it was me versus them. It's an unselfish way of thinking, but it's not a healthy way of thinking. So, like, that's the good and the bad, I guess you could say, of it. But there has to be a balance. And for a lot of the people that I've dealt with that have this kind of these kind of thoughts, the way that I put it to them is that the person that died, they were doing exactly what they wanted to do, and if they had to choose between them or you, they would probably choose them, because we as patriots are unselfish. I mean, that's my experience. And I'm not just saying this as a belief, it's what I've experienced in my deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. All my Marines that were wounded. I remember when I went in 2005, we had one guy, we had only been there 5 days, and he had both legs blown off. And there's just many more throughout time that I saw that were wounded. Every single one of them, when I saw them, when I talked to them, all they talked about was wanting to get back with us, join back, even though a lot of them physically would never be able to. That's all they talked about. So what that tells me is had they died, nobody wants to die or be injured, but they wouldn't have changed it. They still would have done it. There's a really neat story. I was on Fort Lewis here in Washington, and I got word that there was a military flight coming in that was full of wounded soldiers, Marines, and there was 2 Marines on this flight. The majority were soldiers, and there was 1 airman. And I didn't know any of them, but I just heard that there was 2 Marines. I'm like, I'm going. So it was at Madigan Hospital there in Fort Lewis. I show up, and one of the Marines, he was fairly minor injuries, but the other one was severe injuries. He had lost both legs, one arm, and a portion of his other arm, so all four limbs, and a lot of internal injuries, and his face was all distorted. I walked into the room, and he was just very excited. It was me, and I brought two Marines with me. Very excited. We don't know each other. He just sees us, and he's excited. And his brother, who had been traveling, his brother was civilian, was traveling with them. They were headed to California, and the plane had broke down. He kicked his brother out of the room, and he just wanted to, talk with us. And we visited him for a while, and he was just upbeat. And when he walked out of there, I spoke to the other Marines. Not once did he ever complain. He never said, I should have never joined. I should have never went. I wish it wasn't me. Not once. And so the point I'm getting to is, in survivor's guilt, I get it why people think that, but you always got to think kind of in the other shoes. Would you change anything? And the answer, for what I've seen, is no, because good people are unselfish. And I know it's still hard to deal with, that survivor's guilt, but it's something that we have to constantly think about, in the whole picture of things, what we did and why we did it. So the motivations behind that.
Thank you for sharing that. Of all the conversations that we've had around this subject, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that we've ever had somebody give that perspective, that mindset shift of, you know what, of all those people that we've dealt with, they wouldn't have changed anything. The ones that have survived, putting the shoe on the other foot, if you will. So thank you for that. I think that that's actually very helpful. That will probably help some people that deal with those things at least consider that their battle buddy wouldn't have changed anything, because it would rather be them than the surviving. I want to take a little bit of a shift real quick, because we're losing time, and I want to give everybody an opportunity to be able to participate here. But you've been a police officer for over 25 years, right?
Yes, 26.
26 years. And especially in your career, I'm guessing that from 2020 on has probably been the most difficult times for law enforcement that you can experience as a whole. Would you agree with that?
Yes, for sure.
With all of that, you still love this job.
I do.
With that, you're still very happy in what you do. You got enough time to walk away and retire, but yet you still choose to show up and be happy and do this job that you were put on this earth to do. How do you get there with the politicians that say that they hate you, that they say that they want to defund you, that they call you murderers, that they say that they want to do away with you completely, if not completely dismantle the selfless job that you do, the service that you provide? How does Dan Espinoza wash that out of his head and still be happy and enjoy going to work every single day? Because there's people from Minnesota, LA, San Diego, New York, Chicago, Seattle, Portland might be the worst affected by all the George Floyd stuff. How have you been able to survive that? And beyond survive, but you're still thriving this. You still want to do this every single day. As we see such a mass exodus of police officers leaving this job, most often because they say they don't feel respected or valued any longer. How do you still remain so resilient to keep driving on doing what you're doing after all these years?
Well, I'm going to start this off by saying something that seems like a very simple answer, but then I'll break it down and explain a little bit. One is, and you actually used the word, is that I choose to. I choose to be happy versus not enjoy my job, my day. Part of that, I give credit to my father and too. I don't know, maybe I was just wired this way from birth, but I've always been the glasses half full versus the glasses half empty kind of person. I'll just give a quick story about my father. I remember many instances where he would do things that I don't think the average person would do. Like one time he lost a $50 bill. You know, back in those days, he didn't have debit cards. Everything was cash. He only had cash, and $50 was a lot of money back then. This is back in the 70s. And he didn't complain. He didn't get mad. He said, let's go celebrate. And we went and ate. I don't know the thinking behind that. I mean, as a little kid, but you see where I'm going. My dad was always thinking positive. So I think that influenced me. As I've gone through my life, I've always been that way, where I'm going to lean to the positive side. So in everything, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's your marriage, your job, whatever. Don't focus on the negative things. Focus on the good things, the positive things. And no matter how bad something seems, there's always going to be good things. So you just got to look for them. So this is a very simple term, but I live by it. I always say, don't sweat the things you can't control. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to worry about, in my case, where you have a city council that doesn't like law enforcement, a mayor that taking the city in the wrong direction, the department itself with all the issues, all those things. I'm in a position where I can't control any of that. So you know what? I'm not going to waste my time, my energy to worry about it, to let it burden me, because all that's going to do is drag me down. It's going to be a weight on my shoulder, and I'm going to be miserable every day. So what I do is I focus on the things that I can control. And the first thing I can control is my mind, my thinking. That's where it starts. Everything is about, you have the ability to control your day. Do things come and throw haymakers and trip you up? Yeah, that's going to happen. But you got to deflect that stuff, deal with it, learn how to move on. So in all this, these last few years, since 2020 when it's got bad, I take all the negative things that happen and I push it aside and say, I'm going to focus on the good things that happen. And I could tell you, one of the things that drives me specifically in law enforcement is people. People are awesome. And I've been saying this my entire career. And sometimes my wife says I'm too trusting, because I believe that, yeah, there's a lot of bad people in this world, but there's way more good people. And I don't, I know people, other people in law enforcement, that it's easy to become untrusting of people because of the things we deal with. I'm the exact opposite. I'm trusting. And one of the things I really like about being in motors, in traffic, is I'm out about moving, meeting new people, business owners, residents, tourists, on all the time. And even in this lowest of low times, when there's a movement across the nation of anti-police, and some of this has even crossed to other countries, there's a very negative low time in not being able to police. Even in those times, on a daily basis, even today, I get way more thank you, officer. But we're glad that you're a lot of people are thanking me that I'm still working, because they can look at me and say, hey, that guy could leave, right? They realize that. They ask me how long you've been on, things like that. They thank me for still working. And I'm even, I rarely do get negative things, but they far are below the positive comments. So anything negative that people say or do to me, that's way down the bottom. I don't even remember it. Why? Because I choose not to. I focus on the good people, the good things that people do. And when it comes down to it, just like that, we were talking about the tribe. it's in a bigger realm, but it's still a tribe. We're all humans. We're all of this community, and we're all here for each other. So my word to anybody out there that has issues of coming to work and dealing with this is just don't focus on the negative. Focus on the positive, and try to not just focus on it, but try to be the positive, the one that's given others encouragement and giving them reasons to enjoy what you're doing and be happy.
Thank you for that. And I think that a big powerful part of that is that we've got this traffic guy, and anybody who's on here who's going to watch us in the future, everybody has this really negative connotation about traffic, especially motors guys. Oh, they're emotionless. They don't care. They're going to write you a ticket. They're just grumpy. They hate life. Thanks for giving that perspective, that outlook about being happy. And you know what? Not all motors guys are grumpy and just give everybody tickets. They enjoy interacting with people. Last two things, if we want to touch on this real quickly. How much does perspective go in your past experiences, the things that you've experienced, weigh into your positivity? Because things could always be worse. And we'll just leave it at that. And then we'll open it up for questions.
So I think perspective is huge in anything. I'll give a couple examples. When I first I went to well, in 2002, I went to Kuwait in preparation for the war to start. In 2003, we were waiting on the line there, waiting across into Iraq when the war started. I remember when I get there, there's a thermometer on a 4x4 post, and it was pegged at 140 degrees. And I remember looking at that and saying, "It's going to be a long deployment." And people have asked me, how did you deal with the heat? You know, you got a full combat gear and dealing with this heat. And I said, I just didn't think about it. If I dwelled on the heat, I would be miserable, but I didn't think about it. And this is important because it goes into just what I was just talking about. Don't dwell on the negative. Don't dwell on this. It'll just weigh you down. It won't make you happy. I just pushed forward and didn't think about it. With that perspective, I also remember thinking to myself, I'll never be hot again. So back home, no matter how hot it gets, people will be walking around, oh, it's hot today, this and that, and complain about being at work. I'm not hot at all. Why? Because of my perspective. And so perspective is very, very important. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to have that perspective, but to understand that there are other perspectives. And so I'll give you another example of there's people that will see maybe a TV commercial of maybe some African kids run around without shoes. And I say this because I've been to 14 different countries in Africa, had a lot of experience there. But they'll feel sorry for them. And I say, I don't feel sorry for them at all. Why? I've been with those kids. And you know what? They don't want shoes. They've grown up their entire life without shoes. They're just fine running in the dirt barefoot. That's a different perspective. But unless you have experienced it or could truly understand, you don't really get it. You don't really understand that you could give them shoes. They're not going to wear them. They have no interest. So life in general, its perspective is very important. I do want to, I know you want to go to questions. I want to bring up something that I meant to mention earlier, and I didn't, got sidetracked, but within the Marine Corps martial arts program, it's a 3-pronged program. I was very involved in the program as an instructor, as a black belt. But what I really like about it is the 3 prongs is mind, body, and spirit. In specifically in the military, and I think this probably applies to a lot of people in the world. The physical aspect of things, that's like a given. Like everybody's working out, you're doing those things. But sometimes people forget the other two, the mind and the spirit. And those are important. You have to have all three to be complete. And this is for the martial arts program, but really this applies to life. So as an individual, it's good to eat well, it's good to work out, but don't forget to take care of your mind and your spirit. And it could be a lot of different things. But for those of you that have dealt with trauma, PTSD, any of these kind of things, you know how important the mind is. And mind's also powerful. I say all the time, the mind's so powerful, it can make you sick or it can heal you. That's how powerful it is. The other thing is with spirit, it could be a lot of different things. It could be religion, could be other things in the PTSD Foundation of America. I start out every morning with meditation, and I've seen it do wonders. So I bring that up for those, if you've never given it thought, try to remember to work those three areas in your life.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sergeant Major. I really appreciate it. I'm not going to take any more time. I'd like to open it up for any questions or any interactions that folks in the group would like to ask Sergeant Major Espinoza. Barry.
Dan, you nailed it. You know, if we could bottle you, and I would have given inoculations to not just my generation that were a hell of a lost generation when we came out of Rhodesia, or what is now Zimbabwe, but all the guys I've sat with from World War II to Iraq, Afghanistan, over all these years, you know, when you talk about flipping the light switch, they didn't even know where the switch was. They were so lost. I think where you really hit it 100% is at mind, body, and spirit. And you know, that's where I go. You clean the working parts of your weapon. That's your body. Your pull-throughs are your mind, because you've got to go inside. And when you talk about meditation, and I've met Ryan Rogers, who's connected to your organization a couple of times on another group. And, you know, you nail it there as well. And you've got to have that combination of your mission, your purpose, your internal work, and your physical work. Are you aware, or do you ever feel the edges of yourself where your journey whispers to you, sometimes with pain or grief? Do you ever feel that at all at a kind of at a heart level? Because you have an incredible resilience, which is quite unusual, and the ability to, it's like I call it your arc of fire. You focus on what you can impact on, and the rest you kind of leave alone. But do things whisper to you in the darkness of the night?
I have the exact opposite. I miss it, and specifically for me personally, combat was addicting, and for some of my close friends, we would come back from a deployment and we'd be back a couple of months and we're ready to go again, because it's like, I don't know, it's the best way I can describe it is it was like an addiction. We want to go. Part of that addiction, I think, it encompasses a lot of different things. Well, I'll give a little short story. We came out of Fallujah, and we were in a place called Haditha where there was a dam, and just to get some downtime, get to shower, get some hot food, and I had a young Marine. He was about 22 years old. We're laying there on a cot, and he says, "That was the most beautiful, horrible thing I've ever encountered." And without context, a lot of people be like, "That's contradictory. What he's saying." I knew exactly what he meant by that, because it's some of the most awesome, even though there's horrible things happening, at the same time, it's awesome in that moment. The other part of that this has come through a lot of thought. I think why it's addicting and why a lot of us miss it is because of the camaraderie. The camaraderie that you build specifically in the military is high, but in the combat environment, it's even higher. And you can't get that in the world. You could do just about anything you want to do. If you have a lot of money, you could decide, I want to go fly F-18s. If you have enough money, you can find somebody that'll let you do it. But I don't care how much money you have, you can't buy this kind of camaraderie. And so that for me has been something I miss extremely, being in those intense moments and coming out of it with each other. I can't replace it. So to answer your question, no, I haven't felt that at all. I felt the exact opposite, where I wish I was back in it.
And that's
yeah, I
something.
think
Go ahead, Barry.
I think what you really hit well is that concept of tribe. And you know what I learned was when I began working with veterans 22 years ago in current serving, I was sitting first in the chair as a psychologist because I really wasn't paying too much attention to my past because it was a long time ago and we knew nothing about anything. We just blasted out. And then I realized working with the guys that when we're in tribe, it's a brotherhood, a sisterhood, whatever you want to call it. And there's one beat, you start listening to each other's hearts. And it doesn't matter what generation it is. The minute guys walk into my room, we understand each other's hearts. And I think that's the value of the tribe. It cuts across generations. It cuts across countries. It cuts across chronology. And it's that unique beat where even as we age and we can no longer be in combat or exercise excessively, that beat reminds us who we are, and it's deeply healing. And I think you really bring that out today. And I really want to say thank you for that.
Yes. Well,
And I'll tell you what, let me vouch for him on this, because when, as a reservist, you got your civilian job that pays us pretty darn good, and you're taking a huge pay cut when you go on active duty, even on deployments. And to volunteer for those things and take that pay cut, number one, that's true dedication. And hi, baby, that's true dedication. And it truly is a calling. So thank you so much, Sarah.
Dan, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's very inspiring to hear your attitude. I mean, to go through everything that you've gone through, to see everything that you've seen, and, your decision to really focus on the wonderful people out there and the camaraderie and the tribe that you had in the military. It's just very inspiring. And what this conversation also reminded me of, I was having coffee with a guy who's transitioning soon. He was a combat medic, went through a horrific situation where he left this room for just honestly like 2 minutes. And all the guys that he trained with were killed by somebody, an imposter, posing as somebody who was helping them, in the country that they were in. It was just a horrific thing. And so we kind of were talking through that, but he was sharing something that I never heard before too. He said there's a purity in combat. And he goes, as horrible as things can be, there's a purity in the relationships. Like nobody's caring about what your shirt looks like, or, what, fancy clothes you're wearing, or your car, you know what I'm saying? It was, but I was just kind of touched with how he was sharing that. And so he's going on with a very positive attitude. He's looking forward to his next season. But I just kind of filed that in the back of my mind, that there's a purity in, like, it seems like everything is burnt off when you are in that situation. Now, I've never been there, but I just kind of take in what everybody else shares with me with their stories. So thank you for that.
yeah, and I totally agree with that, the purity part. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier, that our job is very easy in that situation. We have a mission, we just do it. It doesn't matter your race, your political affiliate, none of that matters. You're just there for each other and you get through it.
I gotta say, I think I'd like to see an hour long conversation with Barry and Sergeant Major Espinoza. I think that would be something awesome to dive into.
I'd love to.
Go ahead. I think that you got two warriors with decades and decades of experience, with all due respect, with the decades, that you just can't generally tap into. And you have Dan with his very, at least in my experience, a very unique way of processing, and to be able to flip that switch. It reminds me very much of the story of Sebastian Younger and Tribe, where back in the day, the natives, when they would go out and hunt or go on their little their combat sprees, they'd come back and they had no issues. It wasn't a big deal. So I think that there's a lot to be learned there, and I think that a lot of it has to do with your belief in the mission. Sorry, my daughter wants to join in here. Wants to the purity of your belief in the mission. So thank you so much for that. Is there anybody else that'd like to tap in and ask Sergeant Major Espinoza any questions before we get off here? All right, well, Sergeant Major Espinoza, thank you so much for all of your time. Thank you for your decades of service, both in the military as a Marine and with your police department that you work on. I hope you stick around for a long time, and I hope that all the young Marines that you still come across and the young officers take something away from you. And if it's nothing more than your path to helping them choose to be happy, choose to be good with their career, and keep serving forward. So thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me on, and it's good meeting you all.